Hello,
Hello,
I'm Becky,
I'm Rebecka.
and welcome to episode 3 of the Tea Hive, the series where we talk about all things music and things that we're passionate about. And today we're going to be focusing on the pioneering American avant-garde jazz vocalist J. Clayton.
And this episode is going to be our tribute to her because J. Clayton passed away on the 31st of December 2023 at the age of 82. And the number 2 is something that we're going to explore in this episode, the duo. J. Clayton is one of the most adventurous singers in jazz. One of the first singers to incorporate poetry and electronics in her improvisation. She is also one of the first vocalists to become part of the avant-garde and free jazz movement.
The term avant-garde, to me, that's got kind of inherently political connotations.
Totally.
You know, if you look at the origins of the word in kind of 1850s France and this idea of being at the front as well, of being very innovative and explorative. In what ways do you think she embodies these sorts of things as a vocalist?
I think partly it's down to her technique and the way that she explored sound, the difference between sound, singing and speaking.
Yeah, like where do you draw that boundary? Where is it?
The constant exploration of what it means to be a woman in her work, because she used a lot of poetry, lyrics and texts written by female writers. And she grew up with a mother who was a jazz singer, but because her mother was a mother and also a married woman, it was impossible for her to become a professional jazz singer at the time. So I think for Jay to grow up with a mother who had this sort of urge to sing and to do that professionally, but not actually being able to do it, must have, affected her in one way or another.
Yeah, and she was, of course, kind of coming into music in the 60s and 70s, height of radical feminism.
Yeah, she was born in Ohio, 1941, and she went to the Miami University in Ohio where she studied classical music because that was the only course available for vocalists at the time. But she still explored jazz constantly, and she was very influenced by John Coltrane and Miles Davis. So when she was finished with her studies, she went to New York. That was where she met Steve Lacy, the saxophonist, who introduced her to her future husband, Frank Clayton. And together in 1967, her husband Frank and her started the Loft Jazz concerts.
Yeah.
And they were actually some of the first people to start those concert series.
Yeah.
And the Loft Jazz was this beautiful phenomenon where musicians invited fellow musicians into their home, and it became a sort of creative hub at that time.
Yeah, I would imagine so. Kind of a very intimate setting as well, where you've got kind of a much closer relationship between the audience and the musicians.
And Clayton was also the artistic director of the first ever Women in Jazz Festival.
Which is incredible when you think about it. These things still go on today, kind of celebrating women inside of this medium. And she kind of explored a whole load of different genres, you might say, throughout her career. What do you think drew her to working with so many different people and in so many different mediums?
I think it was partly her musical background of having studied classical music, having studied for years with Paul Bain, who was a folk singer, and also having this constant curiosity about the free jazz and to develop that in her own way. And yeah, you're right. I mean, she worked with Steve Reich, John Cage, Fred Hirsch, Charlie Hayden, covering such a broad span of different genres. I think she had this strong urge to explore the voice and to do that with other singers. I think she must have found that really exciting, which I can relate to.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
And she was invited to a vocal meeting in Germany, and there she got together with Laura Newton, Jean Lee, Ursula Duxiak and Bobby McFerrin.
Yeah.
And they created this vocal group called Vocal Summit. Really playful, explorative. In 1982, she built the vocal jazz program at the Cornish College of Art in Seattle. And she was on the jazz faculty for 20 years. And she also kept gigging and performing throughout almost her whole life.
Two.
I would like to talk about 2 albums. It is J. Clayton's second album that she ever released, which is Sound Songs. And then it is her second to last album that she ever recorded, which is Alone Together. And those 2 albums she recorded with Jerry Granelli.
Quick fun fact about Jerry Granelli, I think this is really funny considering like what this music sounds like.
Yeah.
He was the drummer for a lot of the Charlie Brown music.
Yeah.
So he's one of the most listened to drummers of all time.
Yeah.
And then he's got this super experimental stuff.
Yeah,
exactly. I love
that.
What do you think made her want to come back to doing another duo record with the same person after such a long time?
So I think that Jerry and Jay had a really special connection. They played so much together, and when they started out, they obviously explored all of these new things together and recorded an album. And then after, 30 years of playing together in different contexts, they felt like, you know what, it's time to make a new duo album. Jay and Jerry are mainly just improvising on these 2 records. Jay is applying electronics as well as poetry. And what's so clear in this rather unusual duo setting is the natural use of melody in the drums and rhythm in the voice.
The kind of the use of sort of tuning of different percussion.
Then there are the 2 of us. Don't tell. They'd banish us, you know.
Their rendition of Emily Dickin's poem I'm Nobody is an example of this. That piece is also stands out to me because of what the poem is about, going against an authority, being on the outside. And to me that really connects with a track on their second album, I'm a Fast Speaking Woman, by Anne Walton.
I'm a shouting woman, I'm a speech woman, I'm a flesh woman, I'm a flexible woman, I'm a high-heeled woman.
To me, even though the words are very different and the style of the poems is very different, they're kind of talking about a very similar thing, about what does it mean to be a stereotype.
Exactly.
And this idea of female archetypes and stereotypes and how do we fit them and how do we break them. Something else that I've noticed on the album when I was thinking about you, because obviously you recommended it to is the kind of the use of these sort of bird-like sounds. And you do a lot of that. Can you do a little bit of it? What's actually making that whistle sound?
So it's a combination between teeth and tongue.
Wicked.
And the tongue moving back and forth, going from that shape to that shape.
I was going to try, but I'm not.
Jerry Granelli and I have been a nucleus of many combinations.
The very same year that they released Alone Together, in 2020, I went with a drummer down to Cornwall to visit some friends, and we were supposed to be there for 3 days, but ended up being there for 3 months because of the pandemic. So we had no one else to make music with. So it was me as a vocalist and the drummer, and we explored so many things together in all random sorts of places that we could find. We were in the garden, we were in a beach hut, we were in a greenhouse. For me, that was a life-changing experience because it was my way into free jazz. Playing duo with a drummer is one of the most challenging things that you can do as a singer. And same way, the other way around. So I think if you're a drummer out there, go find yourself a singer.